There you go.
Okay, so my backstory on all this is that I had another life where I ran a business and I taught MBA marketing classes and did a bunch of other things. And I came back, I had painted a little bit in my 20s. I came back to painting at 65. And one of the most exciting and really rewarding aspects of my work life was that I created a network of people who were, some people call them mastermind groups, some people call them support groups, whatever. In many respects, it's not unlike an art critique group, which is very common in the art world. But with artists, typically, a lot of artists are either intimidated by or just flat turned off by the whole idea of how do you promote yourself, and the business side of what we do. So I wanted to create a group where we would support one another, we would share information. We're all kind of in the same fish pond, sharing a lot of or learning a lot of things, but not necessarily sharing them, except when we come together at a paint out or whatever, and we might share, oh, there's a new gallery we hadn't heard about, or there's some other development happening in our world, and other than that, we don't really have a vehicle to sort of share with one another. The other thing is that we don't necessarily think about what each of us is trying to accomplish with the business side of our art. And ultimately, if we want to be able to paint all the time, we have to sell some stuff or we don't eat. And it's hard to keep all those other bills taken care of. So there was a real positive benefit to having a network of people who were seeing what was going on in the world around us. There was also a benefit to sort of encouraging one another, etc. So I decided to start this group. And it turned out that Lee McVeigh and I had both taken a workshop with Shannon Campbell. And she's the owner of Sorrel Sky up in Santa Fe. And she did a seminar. There's a couple of people that are doing these types of seminars. There's a guy named, I can't remember his last name, Jason from Xanadu. I think it's Harbrinks or Hard.
Something like that. But
Something
it's
like
Xanadu
that.
Gallery.
Yeah, Xanadu Gallery. And so there are a few folks like that that are doing seminars for artists, basically trying to demystify the process of how you get into a gallery, what is a gallery owner looking for, how do you dialogue with them in a way that is mutually beneficial, etc. And Lee McVeigh and I both took the one that Shannon Campbell offered, and it was interesting. There were a few takeaways for me. Ultimately, the one that was probably most discouraging was that they only add a couple of new artists every year. Less than 4, I think, was somewhere in the ballpark of the number. And they'll do sort of a web-based call periodically to find new artists. But Shannon said, well, really, of the 3 or 4 new artists I might add every year, maybe one of them comes from that call. The others are people I've met somewhere. I've been exposed to their work at another gallery or in a show or at a paint out or whatever. And so it was kind of discouraging that you go to all the trouble of trying to put that package together to represent yourself, and you might be, and on top of the fact that the odds are low in terms of it's maybe one a year, she also gets anywhere from 50 to 200 people reaching out to her a year. So So I stepped back and we said, what would be helpful is to recognize that that is the world we live in. But more than that, there's a lot of other things we can do. One of the best takeaways that I got from Shannon was keep putting yourself in front of the galleries. Do everything you can to be in shows, to advertise, to do anything that will keep you in front of the gallery owners. Because the probability of success is much higher if you're the person who sent a postcard out to her, if you're the person who approached her at a show or whatever, and she happened to keep your postcard or business card on her bulletin board, you got a better chance of getting attention. But that's part of the story. What we wanted to do as a group was sort of really look at the big picture in terms of what it is we're trying to accomplish. So we started by writing down our goals. Very often we kind of think about what we want to accomplish, but we don't actually take the step of sitting down and writing down our goals. And that it's powerful if you not only think about what you're trying to accomplish this year, but you actually write it down. It's more powerful if you share it with other people you respect, because you almost create a sense of accountability for each other that this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to share my goals with you in a minute and kind of talk a little bit about how I approached it. But the idea with this group was we were going to first try to learn. We were going to identify, what buzzwords were we hearing. For example, several of us were approached to do commissions, but you kind of have to say, well, okay, what's the best way to approach that? Do we get a deposit up front? Do we have some sort of an agreement? How are people doing this and doing it in a way that works out well for the collector and the artist? So those kinds of things are what we sort of put on a bulletin board and said, these are topics we really want to learn more about. And we all want to pursue that. So that was part of the goal. And then the next thing was to sort of look at all the aspects of what we're doing. So like I said, I'll share my goals with you in a second, and you kind of see how I approached it. So we're investing time and energy in that part of our life that involves trying to sell our art. And we're also investing in one another. And that's where a group like this can be really exciting. And I'll give you some great examples in a minute of how this has really paid off for us. So it's a business support group. We're trying to learn, we're trying to grow, we're trying to support one another, and in the process, trying to succeed. And the rest of what I wrote up, I think Dick shared kind of my thought process.
Everybody should receive that in the email.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys see it?
Mm-hmm.
Here,
I
I got one.
I have one extra one.
I have at least two that I brought.
Okay, well, if anybody needs one,
steps.
I've got one here.
I think there's Peter's steps right here.
Are we gonna go through it together,
Well, I'm going to talk a little bit at a high level about what drove me to it. A lot of the things I'll say are kind of in here.
or? Okay.
If you want to, I can take a few minutes and go through it. But in the process of sort of talking through this, I hope we'll get
Did you see that one?
we'll get a sense of this. But again, the idea is a business skill development.
Here.
Again, the problem is artists do all this on their own. We're pursuing a lot of this stuff without any real feedback from either a group that can help support us or from others, other than the galleries who say, sorry, we're not
Yeah.
accepting any new
Okay,
artists.
so before we get into that, the reason we're here today is because I talked to Jack and Jack's group, and I said, why don't you let me in your group? And they said, because part of the group is doing their online affirmation and accountability, he said that we were limiting the group to a small size so everybody can have a voice.
Mhm.
So Dick, why don't you start your own group and do another small cell so that we can have another intimate group that discusses the issues and
Right.
can be more fair.
So you're in the group that just formed, and you're looking to form a group.
And
Right.
you guys you
Yeah.
guys would be the group I'm looking to form.
Right, right.
And so what we had put together goals for the year, and we were in the process of sort of pursuing all those goals as a small group of 5. And everyone knows and respects and loves Dick, but we were concerned that we're sort of in the process of trying to get all this going. Adding another person kind of in midstream seemed like it wasn't the right time to do it. So we thought, gee, it'd be great if we could get another group going, because I helped, I don't know if anybody's heard of Clark Hewling's fund. I helped them create what they call the Artists Federation. And the Artists Federation is groups of artists doing exactly the kind of thing we're talking about. They come together as a business support group, they give people advice and so on. And the problem when Dick and I talked about it is that Clark Hewling's casts a really wide net. I mean, they have glass artists, they have potters, they have painters, they have, all sorts of folks in there. The value of this kind of a group is that we're all painters. We're also all in the same geographic market, so we want to get the potential benefit of expanding to other markets, other states, etc. But we share a lot of common experience because we're all painters. And so by comparison with what Clark Hewling's is doing, they're not getting as much traction with the groups because it's hard to give somebody advice on how to sell or how to approach the marketplace with something that's completely out of your personal experience because they go to market a totally different way. So the idea was that we meet once a month, and my group's been doing that by Zoom. But quarterly, and when you meet once a month, the idea is kind of we start by everybody sort of sharing what's going on with them, and how is their business going? Are they experiencing or learning any new things that the rest of the group could benefit from, et cetera, et cetera. And then we usually try to then have a topic that we talk about in a little more detail, i.e. commissions or whatever. And I'm going to share a little bit more of that in a minute. And then the idea was quarterly we would try to meet face to face, and we'd have a little bit more detailed sort of content area. So for example, we hired Stephanie West, and she did a 7-week series of workshops, and I brought a copy of this, and I'll pass it around.
Okay, Stephanie gave me a new one,
Okay.
and the prices are different.
Okay, well, I don't have prices on this, it's just
okay.
topics. The idea was that,
You paid her for the workshop?
This would be separate if we did that, yes.
Okay.
We have to agree to do it.
yeah, so, but the idea was we dove into, social media marketing, advertising, etc. And they were just 1-hour bite-sized seminars, but they were kind of topics that we were all intrigued with or concerned about or whatever, and we wanted to learn from. So that was kind of the idea, and if you look at this, I have some more ideas in there around doing everything that Dick and you guys have already done, forming a group, kind of getting everybody to the first meeting, and none of this is intended to be hard and fast. One of the other problems with Clark Hewling's was they were really, sorry there, phone. They're very
Okay.
rigid about how they structured the group. you guys may decide that, like any of the things that we're doing, you want to move in a different direction. But it's worth at least coming together. And again, the sort of the foundation of what we did was we started by establishing a set of goals and then coming back together on a regular basis and talking about whether we had what we had accomplished, what we were working on, and then in the process we give each other advice. We have all sorts of feedback and benefit. So in terms of I think what might be helpful is this is the set of goals that I put together, and that was one thing that I don't think you had, Dick, in what you
No, I may have, but I don't know.
you can pass those around. I think I'm short one, so if somebody doesn't mind, if two people don't
I've
mind
got one.
sharing.
I've got one.
So we came together originally with this painter's steps idea, and everybody told me that was too businessy and too sort of the term was too businessy. So our can you guys
No,
share
I've got
one? So our name now is Milagro Painters. And it's John Meister, Barbara Coleman, Lee McVeigh, Sally DeLapp, John, and myself are in this group. So the first thing we did was, and this is my approach to it. Everybody took, again, the idea is nothing is hard and fast or structured or too firm. My approach to doing a set of goals was this format. Barbara Coleman said, I don't want to think about a whole year. I feel more comfortable thinking about 3 months at a time. And so she put together kind of a quarterly set of goals. John Meister wrote an epistle that was about 30 pages long.
Yeah, that's right, he would.
And I mean, he had everything in there from, sort of getting into a new gallery to getting his art picked up by the movie and film industry and having his paintings on the wall in scenes in movies. And so, and actually one of the people in the Clark Hewlings group that I was in does that and apparently is successful with it. Whether it's led to any paintings being sold, I don't know. But we all took a different cut at it. So I'm just going to share for a few minutes what my mindset was behind putting this together. I taught MBA marketing, like I said, for 10 years. I ran businesses. So I took a very marketing-oriented approach to it. If you read Eric Rhodes' book, Eric's kind of a blowhard in a lot of ways, but the book is pretty good in that he kind of takes a really almost stream of consciousness sort of an approach to talking about the business of art and things that you needed to start by doing and the progression you take. I came at it from the standpoint that with marketing, there's product, price, promotion, and place, which is the term they use for distribution. In many cases, artists are very insulted if you use the term product to refer to art. I'm not trying to insult anybody. It just happens to be the offer, the thing that we want to sell. And so what I did in putting together my annual plan was I categorized it in that way.
Okay,
And
let me step in for category here. Under tax purposes, the United States government classifies us as manufacturers of luxury purchases. I'm not, that's it.
Yeah.
We are manufacturers of luxury purchases.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's not a necessity,
Yeah.
in that sense, and that's just some tax geek's way of defining the business. But in my mind, the big questions revolve around how do we sell enough paintings to be able to afford to live and sustain ourselves and paint more. And so I started with this notion of, okay, what I'm offering as my paintings are luxury purchases. And I tried to basically, if you look at my bottom notes there, I tried to come up with goals that were measurable and that were manageable. You know, I didn't want to have sort of vague sort of, gee, I want to paint on a desert island somewhere. I wanted it to be specific in terms of what I was trying to accomplish. And I wanted, as I said, I wanted to write them down. They're goals, but I wanted to also think of them in terms of, well, how would I accomplish that goal? And so a tactic associated with it. And then I also wanted to think in terms of what am I going to do to get to that goal. Like I said, Barbara, her approach was, I just want to think about a 3-month period and establish a set of goals and try to accomplish those. And then as I come to the end of that period, think about, well, what do I want to do for the next 3 months? Everybody can approach this in their own way. But under the idea of my painting, I talked about skill development, attending workshops, I talked about critique sessions, membership in OPA and Plein Air Painters in New Mexico. And then under sort of business development, I also hired a consultant named Rose Frederick. She runs the Coors Western Show up in Denver. And she was very helpful at sort of taking a big picture look at my website, my approach to business, how I'm communicating with collectors, that sort of very, very big picture look, and that was very helpful. The second thing was what marketers call place. I actually split that into 2 topics. One was the topic of galleries. And, we keep hearing about supply chain. Every time anybody talks about Christmas these days, they talk about supply chain disruptions. Well, galleries are really a primary supply chain for or a channel for how paintings get sold. But there's also other ways that you can go to market through shows and competitions and so on. So I kind of identified what I was trying to do there and how I was going to try to reach out to those folks. And so that's kind of under place. Price, again, sort of a bad word. In some ways, artists don't like to talk about price, but I think it's important that we take a hard look at what are our other artists' works selling for, and where are we in the context of that, and do we feel like we're in the right place, and do we feel like we want to increase our prices, stay where we are? There's a whole, we spent one of our meetings talking about discounting, because especially during COVID, a lot of people have been doing discounting. And, it's a way to kind of get paintings to sell, but there's a lot of schools of thought on that topic. One is, yes, you might get some more sales. The other is that you're sort of diminishing the value of your work if you discount. The potential is that if a collector that's bought one of your paintings for $2,000 finds out that you're selling that same size and quality of painting for $1,000 now, you've alienated to some degree that collector. So there's a whole lot of schools of thought there. And it's not something we might necessarily spend a lot of time thinking about, but it's helpful to have a group like this. You're all professional, you're all doing this kind of stuff and have been doing it for a long time, and you can learn a lot from one another, and you can also get experience beyond the 5 of you by reaching out to a Stephanie or reaching out to a Rose like I did, or doing some additional research in books and trying to get a sense of how do we feel about that topic. So I felt like it was important to talk about price. Under promotion, I spent in my previous world, I worked a lot with magazines. I also was the marketing communications chair for PAP&M for a year. Stephanie does it much better than I did it, but I learned a lot in the process. So I have a couple of magazines here. I spend a lot of time reaching out, trying to get back to Shannon Campbell, wherever the tags are, that's where the article is. Back to Shannon Campbell's whole mantra, staying in front of galleries, doing everything I can to get in front of them. Under the topic of promotion, I'm going to talk in a minute about what we've done with our group. But the other thing you can do with a group is working together on co-op buying for ads. So I was able to I signed a 2-year contract with Southwest Art, and I was able to negotiate the Artist of Note article from that. And so these are things you may not always think about, but they're really valuable ways to get to build your personal brand. And so I put together a promotional plan to do these kinds of things. The one that Dick's holding is actually not an art industry publication, obviously. In my previous life, I was in the energy efficiency, renewable energy business. And I reached out to those folks, and when they found out I was painting, they wanted to do this article about painting. So that was again, you never know where a potential collector might see your work and be interested in it. I reached out to New Mexico Magazine, and they put me in the retirement article, which was kind of interesting. So the idea was we each took our own approach to setting goals, and we then, on an ongoing basis, revisit with one another, how's that going, and so that was early on. We began by coming together as a group and getting to know one another, and then we put goals together and shared them with each other. The next step was one of the goals that several of us had was to get in front of a gallery and try to get into new galleries. The gallery that I have been in shut down their brick and mortar location, and now they're just online, and they're not selling anything to speak of. John wasn't in a gallery, and Lee McVeigh wasn't in a gallery either. John has since gotten into Manitou. I wouldn't say we had anything to do with that, other than he had that as a goal, and he might have been working a little bit more at it.
He worked them for a long time.
Yeah. But the interesting thing, in my write-up, I talked about how we sort of mutually support one another. John went into Marigold Gallery on Canyon Road about 3 or 4 weeks ago. He and his wife got a condo up in Santa Fe for the year, and so he wanted to spend a little bit more time doing gallery walks and stuff. He went into Marigold, and Bob Brody said, I'm looking for a new artist. Do you know anybody? And it's like, wow, what question do we all want to hear? And John said, well, I just got into Manitou, but I can tell you about my group, and I want to share some of these folks with you. Turned out Marigold said, I love Lee McVeigh's work, and she's in there now. So it's sort of, if we weren't part of it, if we weren't networking together, if we weren't part of that group, it may or may not have happened. So we're all sort of supporting one another in that way. The other thing we decided as a group is that it would be nice to do a group show. So we have just booked our first group show the whole month of September at the Abiquiu Inn in the gallery that's on the second floor there. And so we're gonna do co-op advertising for the show. We got just got Southwest Art to commit to a 2-page editorial piece on the group and the show. And we did that, we got that done because I committed to a year's worth of ads and Lee McVeigh committed to a year's worth of ads. So we had some buying power. They actually gave us a 50% discount on their published price for a half-page ad, for each half-page ad, and they gave us the 2-page editorial on the show as part of it. So again, it's working together to sort of leverage as much value as we could. So the group show is called Painted Stories, and we're going to work some local promotional exposure as well. So the last thing was this training. So I passed this around. The idea is that we all kind of wanted to take a broad, deep look at topics and see what is it we're sort of each mutually trying to get our arms around, and how could we do some additional research or learn some more in a particular area. Stephanie brought some really good information to the table. There's lots of other people that can do that sort of thing. Independently, several of us also hired Stephanie to help with, some brand development, some website stuff, etc. So that's kind of the big picture of what it is that we're trying to do, and some successes that we've had. We've only been doing this for a year. We're just coming up on a year, and I think we've had a lot of fun doing it. It's kind of kept us focused on it. It's easy to say, I'll worry about that tomorrow, or I'll worry about that next week. This kind of, you sort of feel like, well, we're going to get together next week. I guess I better have something to say. So.
Right, that's an accountability issue. You can say you're gonna do something, but if you know you're going to a meeting, I better get it done.
I'd be really interested, you said that John worked Manitou Galleries for a while. What do you mean, what specific, what do you mean worked?
He did a lot of work with the plein air shows at the next door gallery at Sorrow. But I know that he was talking to Manitou for a long time.
Okay.
And so he established a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And when I go in there, they know all about him, and Sorrow knows all about him. Oh, he's a really great guy, and stuff like that.
Well, for example, John just takes time to walk up and down the street on Canyon Road and visit galleries and talk to them. I mean, he just puts his face and his word in front of everybody. That's John's style.
Yeah.
Now what's really interesting is John got in there, and a month and a half later they sold it.
Yeah.
It's been acquired by Legacy. But the good news is that Legacy has, they've decided that the Palace location where John is going to basically be operated, and they're going to keep the same sort of footprint that they've had with artists and so on. Legacy apparently is more of a cowboy and Indian sort of gallery in Scottsdale, I think. Is it Scottsdale? Or?
It is Scottsdale that they're out of, yeah.
Yeah. And so the Canyon Road location is going to be a little bit more. Now, the postcards were just, that was simple idea that, Stephanie said, and it's true, always have postcards with you, so when you're out painting, people stop and ask you questions, and you can always give them a postcard.
Where'd you have them made?
Pardon me?
Where'd you have yours made?
Vistaprint
Vistaprint, yeah.
is really, they're very inexpensive.
Is that online?
Yeah, it's online.
They're pretty reasonable and they do a great job.
Okay.
Um,
And they business cards too.
Oh, they're great.
Yeah, they do business cards, you know, we're thinking about doing a calendar.
Mhm.
There's all sorts of stuff there.
People still use calendars?
You know, most people use their phone, but hey.
I use a paper calendar.
So there's, you know, to me,
My
there's,
wife does a planner, so. I'm
to me,
sorry.
there's so much information that comes to our lives. You know, like years ago, like in '87, when I was selling in art shows, there was nobody around to tell me what to do or how to make my art career move forward. You just kind of bubbled through it. But now there's this whole plethora of library of consultants to everything to look at. And I felt like part of what we could do as a group is we could look at somehow maybe individually or I mean each person might possibly investigate a marketing consultant, different ones, and we could talk about what we think of each of them.
Mhm.
And then get what we, as a group, we might want to go with one if we thought we liked one better than another. The same with any kind of marketing techniques. There's a lot of different marketing techniques, just like, and when I'm talking about, there are individual consultants, but there's also, there's a Clark Healy's Fund, like you're talking about, and then there's Jason Horvath.
Yeah, that's the guy from
With the
Xanadu.
Xanadu Gallery, he does a very similar thing, and I thought it might be good for us to, all of us as a group, to get to see an overview of what these people who say they're gonna help us market have to offer us. Because each one of them, of course, wants you to pay them, so you don't wanna pay 5 different groups.
No, and I think that, so that's why we started with, what are we trying to accomplish? And in the context of what we're trying to accomplish, what are the obstacles? What are the things that we're struggling with in terms of content? And then we could even assign somebody to do some research on a topic and bring it back to the group. And then decide whether we wanna learn more about it or whether we wanna explore more. I mean, I don't necessarily think we always wanna hire a consultant to do everything, but there are people who can, I mean, one thing about Stephanie, she is really very knowledgeable on everything related to the web and social media, and she does a tremendous amount of research there, more so than I would ever do. And so there are certain people who could really help if what you're trying to do is create a social media marketing campaign. What you're trying to do is figure out how to use Facebook effectively, how to use Instagram effectively, those sorts of things. And so that, you know, that's an option that as a group you could decide, is that something we're interested in or not, and does one of us want to explore that a little bit more deeply?
So at this point, maybe I'd like to ask, each of us is here for a reason, maybe partly because I get to ask you, because some of them I know you. What would you be interested in getting out of this, Mike? I mean, I badgered you to come here practically.
I think we all
Sure.
struggle with marketing, you
Okay.
know, and what to do. There's so many ways you can dump your money and waste your time.
Mhm.
It's what's gonna be effective, you know?
Yeah.
Like I noticed you have Facile down here, and I signed up, I used to have my own website, now I switched to Facile, and I'm doing a newsletter with them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not doing it to necessarily sell paintings, but just to let everybody know, you know. But, you know, then I do look at Instagram and all that stuff, and it's just so time consuming to do all these hashtags. And, you know, so I'm kind of looking for what, you know, I like to spend most of my time painting like most artists. But what's gonna be, what's worthwhile, what's effective, you know? I mean, I don't have a condo up in Santa Fe, so I can't walk Canyon Road all the time. But, I don't know. So mainly, you know, what's gonna work, you know?
Alice?
What I would like is it's very specific. Two things. Warwick is closing, I've been with them for years and they've done okay for me. I mean, not great, but okay.
Mhm.
And,
Weinrich Gallery.
Weinrich Gallery. And so I need another Albuquerque gallery, but I also haven't had, I have at different times had galleries in Santa Fe, but I haven't in the past few years. So I really need a Santa Fe gallery. And, I mean, it's really simple. What my goal for this year, would be is to, this might, I don't know if this sounds a lot or little to you guys, but I would like to make $2,000 a month above my costs. You know, it's just real specific because,
Okay, I mean, that's a great goal.
Yeah, I think it's a
That's
fantastic
specific.
goal.
yeah.
It's very specific, it's very measured, you can manage it,
Right.
you know, you
And
can,
I'm thinking about raising my prices a little bit, and I hold fast on not offering discounts. That's so hard.
one of the
That's so
challenges is there's such a difference between Albuquerque and Santa Fe.
Yeah.
I mean, several years ago, I was invited to go to Weems,
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, Weems was sort of the premier gallery for a long time, or one of the premier galleries in Albuquerque for a long time, but their price points were like 30%, not 30% below, but 30% of what Santa Fe price points were. And
Well,
so,
I don't understand.
Yeah, what do you mean by that?
well, like price per square inch, or, you know, the price, so
Plus,
like
they
this,
ran sales without without consulting with artists and
Well,
stuff.
plus how many artists do they have? Like 300 artists or something? How do you get noticed when there's 299 other artists?
right,
You know, I mean, how do you even have any space? I don't know.
Well, that's not where the money people go that buy art. I mean, they don't come to Albuquerque
Mhm.
necessarily, no.
right.
I find it's really hard to sell anything with a higher price in Albuquerque.
Yeah, I agree completely.
Yeah, I have a friend who's never sold in Albuquerque. He lives in New Mexico, and he's never sold here for that reason.
And so that goes back to the whole price thing. So if I price for the market, and I'm in a gallery in Albuquerque that's a reputable gallery, but they're selling paintings, the same painting for half what it would sell in Santa Fe, how do I avoid having a collector feel like,
Yeah,
Oh, you've gotta have a flat,
Yeah,
gotta,
be consistent.
Right.
you gotta be consistent with the
yeah, I agree.
gallery
So,
price.
so let's move on to Connie. What would you think you're interested in getting from this?
Well, I don't have real specific goals set for next year. Well, I'll take that back. I have a couple of goals set. So I don't exactly know how this will play out to benefit me,
Mhm.
but I like small working groups
Okay.
that help each other, and this is a group that I mean, besides Alice, I don't know the rest of you that well.
Mhm.
So I think that will bring more information and
Mhm.
provide, sources of information I didn't already have.
Okay.
So in general, I like the concept of us working together, and some of the things that he said, I think we, sound like good ideas, like pursuing a group show together. I think group shows are good ideas. I like that idea. And I guess I'd like feedback too on, we're all at different places in our careers, and I'd like feedback on sort of what direction should I go next. Like,
Mhm.
I've done pretty well for just kind of floundering around. So like, if I was more, single-minded about
Mhm.
advancing my art career, like, what would that really be like? And like, I wouldn't have any idea which galleries would be appropriate ones for me to approach. Like, I just don't have a concept about that.
That's part of what we could discuss, yeah.
Yeah, so, most of my successes come through the studio tour in Placitas. I live in Placitas, and I sell really well through the studio tour. But aside from that, it's mostly friends and family, and,
Mhm.
but I've also looked back at my sales. I keep good records of my sales, and every year it's gone up. My sales have gone up every year, number of paintings and total revenue, and,
Mhm.
But, you know, could it be better? I don't even have an idea if it could be better.
I get it.
How much better, I don't know.
I have some of the same feelings you do. I get that.
Group accountability and then camaraderie as far as sharing with a group of artists and having that network. Personally, I'm moving from doing as much art as I can. I still work a full-time job in advertising and marketing, and so I had a hope in the next 4 to 5 years to make the shift to full-time artist and bringing my income as an artist up to a level where, you know, my husband's retired and we have an income from him, but giving up my day job income is going to be very difficult because I'm not close to retirement age. So, but I want to be a
Just
full-time
rub it in,
artist.
Wendy, that's okay.
We hear, you're young.
I didn't mean that.
Just
Trust me, I
joking,
still work
Wendy.
for the man. So, and I'm very blessed. I love my job, but I really desire to be a professional full-time artist versus, in my mind, the Saturday, Sunday painter. And making that transition, I think the group helps narrow the amount of information that we hear and summarize it and makes us accountable, and it's nice to meet and work with other artists, so
Yeah.
I get a lot out of it.
And you are a full-time, self-supporting artist.
Well, no, I mean, I rely upon my social security and my pension,
Oh, okay.
you know, that they're real important. That's why and right now, I've been making about, I guess it's been about, I don't know exactly, but, and I'm still teaching at the Art League too, so I get that income, but I've been doing okay. I know I need like more like $1,200 or $1,300 above my social security and my pension to live nicely, we'll put it that way. But it would be nice to have more than that. I want to interject real quick too. Another problem I personally have is that I do both landscapes and abstracts, and I really have gotten, like, the problem is of course, the landscapes sell. And so I get hooked into that, and I really feel that I want to spend more time doing the abstracts. I looked at it, I did 35 paintings this year, and only 3 of them were abstracts, and that's frustrating for me. So
that might be where you need a gallery to handle your abstracts.
I need a gallery to handle my abstracts, because right now they're sitting in a storage unit out on San Pedro.
So that would be goal number 1 for you.
See, that we could spend an entire session on just that thing.
Yeah, that's.
See, one of the things, as I understand, is you've done with your group, Jack, is you might take one session, one 1-hour session, and just spend it on one person. And is that right?
Yeah,
That would
Okay.
be,
yeah, those monthly sessions, the idea is
Like
that
therapy.
yeah.
you have a networking component where everybody shares, but then we try to make time so that if one person in the group says, hey, I'm really struggling with
Yeah,
one issue,
yeah.
you know, and I think, you know, do I need another gallery for abstracts? Do I want to do commissions? Any number of different topics that come up, and it gives you a sounding board,
Yeah,
which is hard to find.
I would like also for every meeting to have, where every person says something about what they're proud of or happy about that happened, so we can share some successes too.
Yeah, that's the networking component. So we start every meeting with
I think
that,
that's
where
encouraging.
we go around and everybody chimes in with what, I got into a show, I got into a gallery, I've had a good month for sales, whatever it is. And then there's always, a challenge that we're struggling with.
Dick, we didn't hear from you on your goals.
Yeah.
Oh, well, the biggest thing for me is that over the years, I feel like a car engine that sometimes has a missing cylinder. So it runs, but sometimes my sales go down, and I'm like, dang, what's wrong? And then they go way up, and I'm like, they go way down. I'm thinking, I need to make, if I had marketing in my life better, my sales would be more consistent. And due to the fact that I've had so many different things happen in my life, I don't feel like I let them take over, interrupt me, and I forget things, and I forget to pay attention to what's essential. And I think of an accountability group here. You guys are, Dick, remember you said you're gonna do this? Oh, well, yeah, that's right, I did.
Are you in a gallery?
Right now, no, because my last gallery that I got out of was not treating me I had 2 galleries that weren't treating me right, and I decided it was time to exit.
Good for you. I did that with a gallery here in
Right.
town that was selling really well for me, but it was
Right.
like, I'm done being screamed at, thank you
Well,
very
I
much.
had a gallery that sold,
Like, literally,
I had a gallery that sold everything I took in the door,
yeah,
almost as fast as I took it in the door.
yeah.
And I said, let's raise the prices, and she said, no.
Oh, you did raise
She
the
wants
price.
to
Wow,
move, she
selling
wanted to
like
keep it
that.
moving.
She
Yeah.
said, I have an artist at this price range, and I sell you at the lowest price in the gallery, and I need you there as the
Yeah.
cheapest artist in the gallery.
Yeah.
Oh, that was very.
See, that makes you feel real good.
And then she took my paintings and put them in the back room.
When,
So I said, oh, just time for you to take them home then. You quit selling them.
Was this
Yeah.
Santa Fe or?
No, that's here in town.
Mm.
So I don't want to tell you which one.
Yeah, we don't need to do that.
There aren't that many galleries here, are
No,
there?
they're not.
Albuquerque?
The other thing I think could be really valuable is that if you guys form your group and things start going real well and we're still doing what we're doing, I think there's great opportunity for us to interact with one another.
Mhm, yeah.
This Artist Federation idea that Clark Hewlings had, it was great because they had groups all over the country and they would come together and try to do educational sessions for those groups. I don't know what it would look like for us to interact with one another, but I just have a feeling, for example, if you guys decided you wanted to do a group show and you wanted to do one in Abiquiu, well, I happen to know the names of all the people to talk to and what time, what time of year to approach them and that sort of thing. So then if you guys do something, whatever, similar, another group show or whatever, then we could sort of share information, and again, this whole thing, all the boats rise kind of concept.
So at this time, we need to think about what we're gonna do for our next meeting. So I have like here is some stuff. This is past these, I sent this email to myself.
Did you respond?
Yeah.
I'll read with you.
Okay, pass that down.
Okay.
This is Jack's writing. I'm pretty sure, it's either Jack or John, one of the two of you wrote this.
Yeah. The idea was first make sure everybody wants to do it, and then talk in terms of what's the best vehicle to do it. A lot of people already have Zoom, so it's easy to set up a Zoom meeting. And we've been doing our meetings for 2 hours, our Zoom meeting. Initially, I was thinking an hour and a half, but inevitably, it always ends up rolling over to about 2 hours.
So first the consensus, do you guys wanna have a second meeting?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay, good.
yeah.
And do you wanna do it Zoom? Because we either have to do Zoom or we have to come back here, or we have to, let's say, it's easiest to meet at the church where I am. I live at a church, by the way.
Well, that's good for me, your church.
Yeah, I know. They live close to me.
Yeah,
Oh, you guys are up in the mountains.
We're all Cedar Crest,
yeah.
or
I
close.
don't mind coming down here.
Yeah.
and I'm in Placitas.
She's
And,
so
yeah,
far.
you're in
Yeah,
Placitas,
yeah.
yes, a long ways.
Yeah.
What
So-
we decided was we would meet by Zoom, and then every 3 months, kind of once a quarter, we
Right.
get together face to face. And then that way, you don't necessarily now we have one person in Truchas, one in Santa Fe, and 2 in Albuquerque. So
Excuse me. Let me get that.
And then-
everybody's not more or
Then the
less in the
missing-
same
The
town.
missing person in our group, Kathy Oliva, she lives up Alameda, past